Can everybody hear me? The person way in the back that's sitting by himself. Can he? Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon. Actually, we're excited that you've chosen to be here. We know that you can be anywhere else, either on a late lunch or on I-85 in traffic or wherever you wanted to be, but you chose to be here. So thank you very much. It looks like there's a lot of people from the ASC. Is there anybody here that's not from Georgia Tech in the house? No? Any students? No? Okay, so because I kind of wanted to look at who is all in the audience, so I wouldn't spend a lot of time on things that you might already know about, so we can get moving here. So introductions. You can see that my name is Buddy Vale. I'm the Senior Director of Operational Excellence at the ASC. I've been with Georgia Tech for, let's say, 9.5 months. So as you can see, I've been manufacturing global logistics and commercial global workplace solutions with CBRE. Most of my experience is in global logistics. I spent about 20 years in global logistics. So it's a nice transition coming from global logistics to higher education. It's been a good challenge for me. Got my Bachelor of Science in Industrial Engineering at NC-A&T. Any Aggies in the house? No? No? Okay. My MBA at UNC in Greensboro and my Lean Six Sigma Black Belt right here at Georgia Tech. So there you go. I've got two of my colleagues with me, and I'll turn it over to Arthur.
How's it going? Hi, I'm Arthur Toal. I'm Director of Continuous Improvement at the ASC. I've got 2 degrees from Georgia Tech, one Bachelor of Science in Mechanical Engineering, and then a Professional Master's of Manufacturing Leadership, which I got in 21, just a few years ago. I've been working with Georgia Tech and the ASC for about a little over a year now. I have Lean Six Sigma Green Belt, and then also for anybody more familiar with the Agile environment, I'm also a certified Scrum Master, so I'm bringing kind of a mix of viewpoints to the table here. I've got 18 years in manufacturing, so just like Buddy, moving to higher education has been an interesting and welcome change. I've got some history in change management. If you're doing continuous improvement in manufacturing, you definitely pick up change management. And then along the way, I picked up some tips out of organizational psychology, which I apply to the work that I do here. I'm going to pass this over to Justin, and I'll get back to you guys later.
Hello, my name is Justin. I'm the data science here at the ASC. I've graduated with a bachelor's in electrical engineering at UT Austin. And right now I'm currently in tech, pursuing my analytics and master's in analytics. And right now, or previous to the ASC, I've been working in the automobile industry, specifically General Motors, and I've been dealing with data in regards to energy and EVs. And after that, I pivoted towards here, and I've been with the ASC for about 6-7 months now.
Right.
Pass it off to Buddy.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. What I'd like to do is, I'm not going to read all that unless you went to UGA and need some help. But that's a bad joke, I know, but it's not as bad as the flags on the Ramblin' Wreck. So I'm not going to read all that. Based on the audience, I will ask a couple questions, but I did want to do some background, maybe for some people online and somebody that might not be familiar with AdminX and the ASC. So just some really brief outline of the ASC and why we're here. We'll talk a little bit about our goals at the ASC of using data and some challenges. We do have some challenges that not only do we have the challenges, but I think we have some good plans and solutions in place to mitigate those. Justin's going to talk a little bit about some systems being used. And also, if you're putting together a data program, as we call it, there's an intake and delivery process that we created at the ASC to kind of track and formalize our data gathering and display. We have some examples. Arthur's going to go through a detailed continuous improvement example that we actually champion for the ASC, and then a little bit about where we're headed and some key takeaways. So hopefully, we're confident that there's some takeaways that you can bring back to your organization and from this presentation. Then there'll be a time for questions. However, we like interaction. So if you do have a question on a particular slide and you'd like to raise your hand, we will answer those during the presentation. So let me just ask everybody here, who's not familiar with AdminX? Everybody here familiar with AdminX? Young ASC people familiar with AdminX? A little bit. AdminX was a initiative put together by President Cabrera. It's a multi-year. It's one of the things I want to point out is it's a journey, not an event. It's a multi-year program, and the ASC was part of that deliverable for AdminX. What we're going to focus on is, you can see the 4: customer satisfaction, data-informed decisions, administrative staff benefits, and efficient and effective processes. We're going to kind of touch on all those, but really from a data-informed decision on how we make efficient and effective processes as the goal for the ASC. So what is the ASC? I believe everybody's, if they're familiar with AdminX, is probably familiar with the ASC, so I won't go into that in big detail. But I will talk about a little bit that we have HR support services and IT support services. IT and AV came in a couple months ago, I believe. Excuse me. And then supporting those functions is customer service excellence and operational excellence, which my team is up here as part of the operational excellence group, supporting those functions. The ASC was, the purpose is to work with central and local units to develop consistent and effective processes. That was the underlying for administrative processes for the whole campus, for all stakeholders. So I won't go into that anymore. Really quick on mission and benefits. Again, I'm not going to read the mission, but the benefits, I will say: streamline and delivery of administrative services, focusing on continuous improvement, which is near and dear to our heart. Improve customer experience. I know there's been some challenges, and again, I do want to stress that this is a multi-year program, and yes, there are some challenges, but it is a journey, not an event. So there are some areas that we still need to improve while we're here. Define clear and standard escalation paths and remove high volume repetitive tasks. That is the purpose of the ASC. So I do want to give a shout out real quick to Leslie Hall and Taylor Ferguson. Leslie was going to be here and help deliver this from an HR perspective. Neither her or Taylor could be here, but a lot of the content that's in this slide deck, they did help put together. So I did want to give a shout out to them. Also wanted to talk a little bit about the distinctions between the data that we're using and we're gathering. The way I look at this from a small perspective is the ASC is based on data, based on actioning people into the system. It's about hiring data, I-9 data, everything that it takes to get somebody, a student, faculty, staff, affiliate, into the USG system or get them hired. HR data is more around the data that you have when you're inside: attrition, turnover, pay, those types of things. So there's the kind of defining. The way I look at it is ASC data is getting you into the system, and then once you're hired, it's HR data. So here's some of the goals that we want to do to use data for. Continuous improvement, that's highlighted because right now, when we brought in certain functions into the ASC, we didn't improve them before we brought them in. Some things we said, hey, we can fix this before we bring them in. Others were, hey, let's just get it in, move it into the ASC, then we'll look at the processes with the OpEx team, go through our structured approach and improve the processes. So we do a lot of analysis on data around those processes, and it's a very structured process, that we go through. Resource allocation, that's a pretty obvious one. One of the things that I'll talk about a little bit is engineered standards. And I think engineered standards by process and by function give you that baseline so you can, allocate your resources accordingly. One of the things there about and I'll get into it a little bit later, is setting expectations campus-wide. When we have an influx of hiring people, we don't at this point have those standards to say, based on historical data, based on how much we have in the pipeline, it's going to take this days. And I think right now the expectation is that it's quicker than that. Improve service quality, cost reduction, those kind of speak for themselves. Data-driven decision-making. We don't, from an OpEx standpoint, we don't like to make any kind of decisions unless they're data-driven. We don't believe in emotional-based decisions. We don't necessarily believe in political-based decisions. I know that happens a lot in higher ed, but we want to base our decision-making on data. Personalized services, predictive analysis. I won't talk about predictive analysis too much, but yes, we can use data to predict what's going to happen based on historical data and based on the knowns that we have if we are expecting a % increase across certain processes. Compliance and reporting. Obviously, I talked a little bit about I-9 a minute ago. I'm not going to go into that too much, but when you look at the compliance and the reporting that we have for not only the USG system, but also the state and local governments, we need to have that reporting that's for them. I-9 compliance is one of those that we looked at. Benchmarking. One of the things that we're going to talk about a little bit later, and I believe maybe it's Arthur is going to speak on some transactions. We look at MSS tier 1 to tier 2 escalations. What is the industry standard, right? So we want to say here, we're at a certain percentage, the industry standards at this percentage, benchmark it, we need to at least get to that. And then of course, we want to improve it from there. Enhanced communication, that is really key. That is key. Everybody wants to know, where my person is in the hiring process. How long is it taking to get somebody through? Why is it taking long on this? Or, hey, great job, you got it through that. Everybody wants to know where their unit or their hire is in the process. So we can come up with some dashboards and some reports and things that we can communicate that to you. And then resource prioritization. Kind of goes with resource allocation. One of the things we have in the ASC right now and we're working on is a prioritization model. We have a lot of projects that are coming in from different units in the ASC and from the outside the ASC, and we don't have the resources. We work for the state, so cost is a big thing there. So we need to somehow be able to prioritize not only our resources, but where we put them and allocate them. So some of the challenges that we have, I did want to talk about challenges real quick before I hand it off. Some of the challenges we have in the ASC around data, security and privacy. We don't really have that in the ASC. I think it's a big issue. You're always hearing about security breaches. This month alone, I think it was Euro Airline, it's an Italian airline, had a breach, and maybe October 11th, and they contacted all their customers and told them to cancel and cut up their credit cards because all their information had been hacked, right? Another interesting one that I was reading on, because it's fascinating to me, was 23andMe got hacked. And a lot of not only personal information, but a lot of genetic information. So I was wondering if hackers were going into the cloning business, but it was interesting read. Data quality. I did a test, not here at the ASC, but I did a test on some data scientists at a previous role. And I asked one person to give me some information, and then I asked another person with the same requirements to get the same information, and I got two different data sets. So we have to really validate the data. And I think a lot of that is, and when we talk about the model, and Justin's going to talk about our model, is validating that data and understanding exactly what the people want, and then writing it down, getting their requirements. Access and accessibility, I put those together. Access is sometimes it takes a little while for us to get it. It took us a couple of weeks to get page up access, I think, for GTRI. So there's a little bit of a challenge there. Accessibility seems to be one of the big challenges we have now, and I'll talk a little bit about on our next steps. Accessibility to me is the unit and the people on campus that don't know or don't have access to the reports. So for example, we had a e-request status report that we built, and we put it on the banner under reports on the ASC, and it wasn't really widely communicated. So people would just call us up and say, hey, where's my person in this process? Because it shows the status, whether it's an I-9 or whether it's on hold or whatever it is, just for the hiring manager's hires. And they didn't know it was there. I said, here's the link. You can go check on your people right here. You don't have to call. And then sometimes they would come back and say, I did, and I got this valid, I can't have access to it. So it's just some challenges there. Integration, we all know that systems don't talk to each other. Volume and retention, I think we had maybe it was this morning, we had where does Georgia Tech's data go? There was a session on that. I don't know if anybody attended that. We have a lot of data. Some of it's really good data. Some of it's data that we probably shouldn't still have. So where does that go? And then how long do we retain it? What's the value of it? Cost and resources, I already said we work for the state, so cost is always something that we're looking at. Unstructured data, real quick on that. Everybody probably remembers Mike Shannon. He was huge on why do we have MSS denials and why are they so high? So we went into the data to find out why, and Pareto, what are the biggest reasons why we have MSS transactions denied. We found out that the true root cause of why they were denied was in the comment section. It wasn't in a drop-down box that you could easily Pareto. Justin might talk about using Python to figure that out, and I know Jalen, you did some work on that as well. But it's very hard to get pertinent information out of unstructured data. So we're working on that as well. And finally, leadership and accountability. And you say, why leadership and accountability on data? A lot of dashboards, a lot of TVs, a lot of reports that are out there, people aren't using. I always use the analogy just because, and I do have a wonderful toolbox in my garage, just because data is a tool to be used. Just because I have a great toolbox in my garage full of these wonderful tools, A, doesn't mean I know how to use them. B, doesn't mean that I have the desire to use them or know why I need to use them. So it's really up to the leaders to say, hey, here's a report, here's why it's valuable, here's what you're going to get out of it, please use it. Because otherwise, a screen with a nice scorecard, a beautifully presented scorecard, is only turned on when you're doing a tour, right? And scorecards is the last one. I forgot about that. Real quick with that, we have good reporting and we have good dashboards, and the team's going to talk about the difference. We don't have good scorecards at this point. It was easy. I told you I was in logistics. When I was in logistics and I had different 3PLs, third-party logistic providers, I created a scorecard of the top 5 things that were important to me. And I gave them to each one of the 5 3PLs. They would fill them out and I could bring them back, look at them and compare who was doing what. Here, if we create a scorecard, the College of Design might not really want the same KPI as the College of Computing. It's not one customer and 3 units, it's 40 units and 1 deliverable. So it's a little hard to create those, and we're working on those. So a lot of challenges, and I think we've got a good mindset. Before I turn it over to Arthur, is everybody familiar with George Danzig? Anybody?
Famous mathematician.
He's a famous mathematician. So I put this here because this is what I truly believe. George Danzig was lazy, just like me, and he showed up late to class, just like me. He showed up late to class. I forget what university it was, but he showed up late to class. He comes in and there's 2 problems on the board. He assumed that they were homework problems. So he took those problems, he wrote them down. 3.5 days later, he comes back, hands them to the professor, says, oh gosh, I'm so sorry, it's late. These were very, very difficult problems. Those were 2, at that point, unsolved mathematical equations that nobody was able to solve. But he went into it with the mindset that this is homework. I should be able to do it. Everybody else is going to be doing it. So he went into the mindset that it's not really a big challenge. And then he created, famous mathematician, some linear programming that we use in logistics today. So the reason I bring that up is that is the mentality that our team has going into this. Yes, there's a lot of challenges, but we will overcome them. So with that, I'm going to hand it over, Garth.
Thank you, Buddy. All right, so I'm going to talk a little bit about a few different types of data presentation. But before I do that, I'm going to let you know that I do not like standing behind a podium, so I'm going to try to move around a little bit. And if you're online and you can't hear me, put something in the chat, and Tim's going to wave at me. Should I do that? All right, I'll do that. All right, just remember if there's feedback, it's Tim's fault. All right, so I know you're not supposed to read your slides, but I want to read through these. Buddy mentioned a little bit about these different types of data presentations, scoreboards, dashboards, what is what. We kind of use them interchangeably a lot of times, and I don't think that we should. So come with me on these definitions. A scorecard is something that is used by customers to compare different entities and to make strategic decisions. Data is presented with key metrics and is surface level. Okay, that's scorecard. And we're going to talk about report. Reports are used by managers to compare past performance and make tactical decisions. So not strategic decisions, we're making tactical decisions here. Data is presented with tables, graphs, and charts and explores a deeper level of detail. And then finally, the dashboard is used primarily by contributors, and it compares current conditions to expected parameters and influence immediate action, presented with gauges, alerts, and graphs. Details very granular. So I gave you a lot of words for Scrabble there. So let's go to something that's a little more palatable. Has anybody ever bought, operated, or owned a car? Okay, all right, we got some hands. All right, there we go. This is my car, or my most recent car. I loved this car. It's a fantastic car. It is a 2017 Chevy Volt. No, I am not standing in Georgia Tech's campus stadium advertising for Chevrolet, Hyundai Sonata, Hyundai Elantra. Those would be similar. Okay. This, if you bought a car, you've seen something like this. They all look the same, right? Why do they look the same? It provides the customers an easy way to compare, right? So this is an example of a scorecard, right? One of the major points that people look at when purchasing a vehicle is the fuel efficiency. And so the fuel efficiency is right there, very visible, catches your eye right away. The next most important thing is usually the price. You're making a strategic decision. You're spending a lot of money. So the price and options that affect the price are also included. Now, some customers are going to be more interested in other pieces of detail than other customers, and so that detail is listed out, but it is smaller and kind of pushed off to the side, so you can go look for it if you need to. Note that it is still all on one page. Scorecards should not be multiple pages. You should not have to click through a bunch of different screens to get your information. All right, scorecard. All right, let's take a look at a dashboard or a report. So my 2017 Chevrolet Volt sent me an email every month. Tell me how my car was doing. This is an excellent example of a report. Let me point out some features of the report. Over here on the left side, very quick, easy to see indicators, green, yellow, red. Is there something wrong with my car? If I want more information on that, I could click on any one of these items and go to a separate page for that more detail. So it's multiple pages, unlike the scorecard, right? Now over here on the right, we've got some some KPIs that I might be interested in. In this case, 231 miles per gallon, but over what time? This is an important factor of reports, is they are time bound. 231 miles per gallon since the last time I got this report, which is monthly. 231 miles per gallon. I loved this car. Next thing, things that you got to watch out for. It's telling me, hey, your tire pressure is low, you better fix that. So the report is bringing up things like that. It's also giving me a look ahead at maintenance coming down the line. I've only got 36% oil life left. Probably don't have to worry about it this month. I bet you next month that's going to turn yellow or red when it says it's time for me to get some changes made. So reports, much more detail required for operation and making tactical decisions. Now let's take a look at dashboards. What's the most important thing when operating a vehicle? Right smack dab in the middle, it's the speed. The speed did not show up on any of the reports or on the scorecard because a lot of times the information that's important for doing the task that you're working on is not the performance metrics. But we want to give people the tools that they need in order to get the job done. There's also a secondary information screen here that is configurable. So different users might want different information. This user has the speed limit show up so they can compare their current operation to the expected standard. My wife, she has this configured to show the current track, album, and artist. And if you change that, God help you. I really just wanted to see what the temperature was outside. That's all I wanted. Moving out from the center, resource status and projections to resource depletion. Now this data is projections to resource depletion when you need to fill up your car. That is based on more data, more calculations. There's stuff happening behind the scenes, but you don't see that. We don't see a graph that says this has been your fuel efficiency over so many miles. Just what I need to know, when am I going to have to pull over and make a decision? All right, and then going out from there, abnormal situations that require urgent attentions, highlight and let people know what's coming up. Okay, you guys think you got a grasp on the differences between scorecards, dashboards, and reports? Great, it's quiz time. So I'm going to turn it over to Justin, who's going to give you a quiz on those terms.
Hello. So the next thing we have here is a report. This is a report that I did in around the summertime. It was based on being able to categorize MSS transactions and their reason for denials. And so these comments, all the categories and the reasons for denial were in the comments, which is unstructured data. And so in this case, I utilized Python as a tool to be able to cluster these different comments into different groups that the model found and be able to sort of try to pinpoint where or what the causes were for those errors or denials, and just sort of be able to go from there and try to understand what we could do better to lessen those denials. And here is the report on the categorizations that I found. Would anyone like to take a guess on what I'm missing here in this report that Arthur mentioned is key to defining a report? Time frame, correct. At the time, I guess I overlooked the need for a time frame. This was all based on data that we had up to that point, and in the future, if the time is not, or the dates are not shown, or the time frame isn't shown, then it could cause or lead to a lot of confusion. So the next thing here is a dashboard. It is a ServiceNow dashboard that indicates a bunch of metrics live, has a direct connection to ServiceNow because it is ServiceNow itself, and shows things like how many cases were open that day, how many were closed that day. And a good way to or a good reason to have live data is to make sure that we're always in alignment with what we expect. If there's too little or too many cases being open, that could be a cause for concern, and we always want to be able to see that live at any point in given time. And usually dashboards also have a interactive piece to them. At the top, you can search for specific assigned to requesters and just limit your options or limit your search from there as well to be able to determine if there's a issue in regards to specific people that are handling cases or other different metrics that you can determine from being able to sort of dissect these data points. So next here is an example of a report that was given to executives based on turnovers. As you can see here, there's a bunch of trend lines to show how the turnover is doing over time. And as you can see, also see that it's a very high level display of data. I think because it's very broad and very standard, we can tell that the customer or the stakeholder that is viewing these reports, it's very important to be able to identify who is looking at these reports. And because in this case, the customer is, or the one that's the people that are looking at this report are the executive levels or the leads. They would be addressing or handling data, or they're making conclusions based off of this data to many different groups and on a high level. And in this case, they wouldn't want to go down to the nitty gritty. And so that's why I think it's always important to understand who is looking at the piece of data and just sort of understand expectations and what you want to see. And so here, would anyone like to take a guess as to what kind of visualization this is?
A dashboard?
While it may say dashboard, I personally believe it's more in line with a report because of the trends that you can see and the historical data that you can see, while it also has interactive features in the top left where you can sort by department or division or executive level. I think it's more in line with the report, but that also gets me to my next point. I believe that it's not always so black and white. I think just you can take different aspects of different visualizations and merge them together based on what your collaborators want. And so I think that's something that you can also take into consideration when developing these visualizations. So next, these are some of the tools that are currently being used. So Python, as I mentioned before, was used for denial comments as an example. Python is a software language that has a bunch of different libraries. And in the case of the denial comments, one of the libraries that I used was the natural language toolkit, or the NLTK. There's also different libraries such as Pandas, NumPy, Seaborn that can store data, make manipulations on data, and also even show visualizations. The next tools are Tableau and Power BI. They're business intelligence tools that give more of a visualization aspect to the data. And so currently, most of the dashboards and reports have been developed in Power BI, but because we don't currently have a live connection to the data or the EDW or enterprise data warehouse, it's been a tedious process of having to always refresh the data manually. And so at least within our organization, we have identified the need to transition over to Tableau because because Georgia Tech has already been using Tableau heavily, and so it has that system integration, and so that's where we're headed forward. ServiceNow is a cloud database platform that has a bunch of data in regards to requests and HR cases and IT incidents. Excel is a common Microsoft tool that we all know. And one key distinction I'd like to make is a lot of files are stored in either XLSX or CSV. A common thing that I've noticed was that CSV files are a bit more universal and they're less sensitive to corruption, and they're a bit more efficient in holding data because usually the file storage is a bit smaller compared to an XLS file, even with the same amount of data. And the last two are OneUSG, or a reskin of PeopleSoft essentially, which houses a bunch of HR data, and SQL Developer has a connection to EDW. If we need to search for a specific table or narrow down to a specific set of data. And so during my time at the ASC, we identified that there was a lot of catchball going on, where essentially we would have to continuously go back and forth with the collaborator in terms of what needs to be done and what requested there, what is being requested. And so one way to ease that process, or one way we thought that could ease that process, was to create a request intake process. And we created a request intake form to be able to kind of keep track of what is being requested, and that the process is a bit more efficient, and that we aren't wasting anyone's time when we're trying to catch ball and nothing's being kept track of. And so one way we alleviated that was to be able to have people put in their request. And right now we're currently also trying to consolidate the data science request intake form into the main ASC one, so that people are less confused as to where they should request or input their requests. And next, the data collection plan. So there are many things that need to be sorted out when we are collecting data. We first need to make sure that the questions are to define the questions that are to be answered to understand. And so essentially, we need to ensure that everybody, the developers, the leads, the requester, understands what exactly that it is that we all want to see. We need to identify what data is accessible, how long it should take to get data to be accessed, and all sorts of data, and just be able to understand what it is that we can and cannot see. We need to understand where our data is pulled, if there's any calculations that need to be done, or if we just want to see visualizations or numbers based on the amount of data that's in, or the amount of data we have. We need to understand who will collect the data and when the data will be collected, especially in terms of when data is being manually pulled, that needs to be addressed. But hopefully those 2 points will be alleviated once we have live data flowing through, especially through Tableau, and just being able to not have to manually refresh all the time. And lastly, one thing that Buddy mentioned, I think we always need to make sure that we properly document everything that we do to ensure that we're all in alignment with our definition. So one person may have a specific number based on what they think is the definition, but another person may have a different number. And so making sure that we all always document how we found our data and like where it's coming from is very important, so that we understand exactly the context behind the data. And so this is a sort of visualization of all those points in a broad form. And next, I'll hand it over to Arthur.
Thanks, Justin. Okay, so we just talked about some of the tools that we're using and some of the data visualizations and the goals and the challenges and everything that we're doing. I want to give you an actual example of what we have done in the ASC to use data to power our continuous improvement. This is a real example. All the numbers are real. And let me take this through you. If you are not familiar with the ASC, I'd like to give you a little background on how this process works. This is a customer service intake. So a user has a problem, they go to the ASC, they say, I need a solution to my problem. Tier 0, they're able to find it online, answer it themselves, never have to call. Great, that's fantastic. If they can't find an answer for themselves, they get on the phone, they call the ASC, and they get a customer service agent. If that agent can't help them, it gets escalated to Tier 2, which is a specialized knowledge agent. And then if it's a particularly difficult problem, or there's something broken or not working correctly, it gets escalated up to Tier 3. The problem we ran into, or we addressed with this, was at Tier 2. The Tier 2 agents were overwhelmed. There was a sense that they were having to answer more questions than they really needed to, and there was an opportunity for improvement. So the customer service team came to the continuous improvement group and said, hey, how can you help us out with this? So we approached it with the DMAIC process. This came from my history in Lean Six Sigma, and it's a good way to explain what we went through. First off, define the KPIs. We want to make an improvement. What are we improving? Okay. The first call resolution rate is really what we were talking about. The number of times it had to be escalated from tier 1 to tier 2. So if we make an improvement that meets the needs of the customer, we're going to see an improvement there. We also thought that we may see an improvement in average days to close, the amount of time that a customer has to wait between when they submit a question to the ASC to when they get their problem solved. So first, let's take a look at that first KPI, first call resolution. During the month of May, there was a first call resolution rate of 34.62%, which is extremely low relative to industry standards. So certainly there is an issue here. We've now validated the gut feeling that there was an opportunity. Now let's go into looking into more detail. We gathered a lot of data. So this, again, 1 month of ServiceNow tickets. We wanted to know, where did these tickets go? What tier 2 service groups had to deal with most of these escalations we found? Most of it, the vast majority, in fact, came in at ASC onboarding and hiring. We also broke down the tickets into 13 different categories. Now, this was not automatically done by the system. The ASC team had to go through 540 tickets individually, reading the comments on each one and categorizing them, ending up with this. And we realized that there's the type of issues are not evenly distributed, right? So if we took a look at that, we organized it from most tickets to least tickets. We put it together into what this is called a Pareto chart. Pareto is the Pareto principle says that 80% of your results come from 20% of your effort. So we were looking for the 80% line, cumulative 80%, and we found that just 5 categories covered 81% of escalations. Now, we haven't solved anything yet. We're still just gathering data and analyzing data. But now, instead of looking through all 13 categories, all 540 tickets, our agents, remember Buddy mentioned limited resources, our agents focused on these 5 categories. And we did that through what I call Gemba walks. Gemba is a Japanese term. It means the actual spot. Again, this comes from a manufacturing background. The idea is you cannot solve someone else's problem by talking about it in a boardroom. You have to go talk, you have to go observe the action as it's taking place. So our team went and sat with tier 1 and tier 2 agents as they dealt with these issues. They further realized that 2 of the categories didn't matter. All of the issues that were being escalated were appropriate for your tier 2. So now we're down to 3 categories out of the 13 that we started with, and then further broke that down into 7 questions. So we started with over 500 tickets, and now we are answering 7 questions. And those 7 questions could be answered by a single FAQ document that was about 10 pages, less than a half an hour of training, and by getting tier 1 agents a little bit of access to a few systems that they didn't have access to. That, of course, required approval. Data governance is important, and data security is important, but we were able to get T1 agents access to everything that they did. So those are the improvements that we made, right? We answered 7 questions. Next, we have to document and monitor the improvement. Obviously, I already mentioned creating the FAQ and trading documentation, but then monitor and validate the improvement. We made these changes. What did we see? What happened? So remember, May 2023, we had a reassignment count or first call resolution of 34.62%. Last month, that number was 60%. That is a 72% improvement in first call resolution. 7 questions. Let's take a look at our other data point, the average number of days to close. Onboarding and hiring team had an average days to close of 10.51 in the month of May. This last month, it was 8.2. That's a 22% reduction. And that's not all. Something that's missing here is that we did still reduce our first call resolution rate, which means the number of tickets that the onboarding and hiring team had to take care of was reduced. So while they took care of 470 tickets, a little over 10 and a half days per ticket in May, that's nearly 5,000 days waiting. That's days where a customer has submitted a request to the ASC and they are waiting for an answer. In September, 269 days at the faster rate, just over 2,200 days. That is 2,700 days that Georgia Tech customers in the month of September did not spend waiting. That's a 55% reduction. So this is what data-powered continuous improvement means. We take data and we use data to make targeted, deliberate efforts and improvements. Remember, 7 questions, 10 pages, to get significant results. So that is what data-powered continuous improvement means. Now, continuous improvement, I like to call the never-ending pursuit of the unattainable goal. We can always do better, so we take a look at improving our own processes as well. We mentioned the issues with manually categorizing all those items, so we are looking into new tools for open text field analysis techniques, and then looking into changing ticket categorization so that they actually have some more relevance. We're also looking at expanding these tools over to some other areas of the ASC. So that is data-powered continuous improvement. I think Buddy's going to wrap us up.
How do I use this thing?
Click the button.
So real quick, I know we're running out of time. Just as where we're headed, and this is kind of talks a little bit about some of the challenges we had. Right now, we've created with OIT, HR, ourselves, we're getting together all the data people across the campus, and we're creating a collaboration cadence. We meet every Tuesday for an hour and talk about all things data, who's working on what, to make sure we're not working on things in parallel. We had an example where I was working on something and then Leslie Hall called me up and said, hey, I'm working on this. And I was like, wait a minute. So we got 2 different requests from 2 different people for the same thing. So we want to collaborate on it. Engineered standards in the ASC, again, without that baseline, we can't really measure improvements is one thing, and we can't set expectations across the campus. The OTC, what we were calling it, on the clock, was 3 days, I think was kind of projected. I was not here for ASC time. When we hit one note that we didn't talk about, or maybe I did, we had over 5,500 e-requests just for students for the fall. And that's a lot of volume. So we want to be able to say, based on that volume with these engineered standards, if we can do something different or kind of set expectations across the campus. Scorecard recreation, I think we talked a lot about that, but we want to be able to give scorecards. Again, we've got really good reports and we've got really good dashboards, but we don't have good scorecards for the executive team. That's one thing we're working on, but I did talk a little bit about the challenge. Campus-wide intake form and process. What Justin showed you with that intake form was it's a way to not only track everything that comes in, but it gets a little hairy. You'll see somebody in the hallway say, hey, I need a report. Somebody will IM you need a report. You'll get a phone call, you need a report. You'll get an email, you need a report. I can't keep up with that. I'm scatterbrained and I just can't do it. So this way, somebody comes up to me at the water cooler and says, hey, I need this. I go put it in the intake form. We go through that process. It's a structured process and we're able to deliver on time. Concerted effort and emphasis on focusing on reporting. Reporting and data is huge. I spend probably 80% of my week looking at reports, trying to build reports, scorecards for the campus. Everybody, again, wants to know where their people are. Availability communication campaign, that is something that we're talking about in our HR data collaboration cadence. How do we get this out? Just because we have these reports, people don't know where they are, and they may not know how to use them. Some of the things that Justin showed you has a lot of filters. So you can go in and look at it, and if one scorecard could be for everybody, but you need to know how to filter it down for your college, your unit, your hires. And then utilization and exploration of new tools. I leave that to these 2 smart guys. I don't really know a lot about data tools. So they are looking at trying to keep up with technology. What can we use? what can we get that's going to be better for us to deliver what we need for the campus. Key takeaways, again, we did want you guys to leave with some key takeaways. We were unsure about the demographic of the audience, whether it was going to be highly students, highly faculty. So we kind of wanted to touch on a few things across the board. But remember, data is sensitive and not available to all. Just because you request data from us doesn't mean that we're going to give it to you. It's sensitive, and we have data stewards that will allow us to say yes or no to that. Develop an intake methodology and process. If you don't have that, you're going to be spinning your wheels. You really need a good methodology, a good model, and a good intake process, or you're going to waste a lot of time going back and forth. He used the word catch ball. You're going to be going back and forth, wasting a lot of time trying to figure out the requirements and what the person really wants. Do they want a dashboard? Do they want a scorecard? Do they want a report? Get to know the end user. That's key. Somebody will call you up and say they need something. You really need that touch point with them. You really need, what are you really looking for? Well, I need something, I need a dashboard that shows trends over time. No, dashboard is something that you use like the dashboard of your car that, hey, I'm going too fast, I need to slow down. It drives you to action right then and there. What you want is a report. So get to know the people and you can help educate them on what they really need. Collaboration, cross-functional groups. Again, that kind of goes with the cadence that we set up with OIT and HR to really understand. The other thing about that is if we could have I mentioned it before, a campus-wide intake form. We might not be the best to get HR data. Leslie and Taylor might not be the best to get ASC data, but we all get asked these questions, right? If we had one intake form across the campus, anybody asks for anything, it goes into that pipeline. We go through our cadence. We decide who's the best to do it. That's the point contact. Again, it's a structured process. I'm all about structured processes. And then leverage data to your team's advantage and collectively understand the limitations in tandem. There's a lot of data out there. I've said it before, there's a lot of data out there and some of it's not really relevant. So use it to your advantage and understand the limitations. And if you've heard Dr. Bolton speak, I don't think there's a meeting or a speech that she hasn't said, excellence without exception. So that's what we're striving for, is excellence without exception. Those are just some of the things that we're doing at the ASC. I hope it's been beneficial for you. Again, I said you could be anywhere else and you chose to be here with us, so appreciate that. Any questions? Easy questions. I know we have 2:30. I think Darren's coming in and doing the closing ceremonies right in here, so we ran over a little bit. Was there any questions online? No?
There is a question on the chat.
Oh, question in the back?
Or on the chat. It says, how did data entered into ServiceNow form make it into other systems? Have you automated anything yet?
I didn't really hear that, and they might be able to answer it better. My data guys.
So the question online was, how does the data entered into the ServiceNow form make it into other systems? And have you automated that yet?
I think right now ServiceNow is like its own thing. We haven't really integrated it with other systems, but we utilize a lot of ServiceNow data in other the software that we use, such as Power BI, Tableau. But ServiceNow on itself is its own thing, and that's where the ASC gets its requests, or that's where it stores all the requests and in terms of HR cases and incidents and what's so not. Yeah.
I think though ServiceNow does integrate a little bit with USG Connect, right? I think.
Yeah, well,
I think there is a current Tableau connection with ServiceNow.
We're going to the crowd now.
Yeah. So Andre Goodman, I think he's the associate director. He's in OIT with the EDW people, but there is a small like current connection between Tableau and ServiceNow where you don't have to manually upload data every time. You can you can make the connection and it'll refresh for you. So there is a small piece right now, but they're planning to extend it.
ASC began automating transactions in OUC.
Have ASC begin automating transactions in OUC? I don't believe we have.
We have not,
No, that we have not.
not to this point. We have a lot of opportunities, limited resources, and a lot of good challenges, and we're excited about
What
it.
does OUC stand?
One USG Connect.
OUC stands for One USG Connect. We're used to calling it One USG.